You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad who has been living in my 1997 Ford van with my dog, exploring the United States, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living podcast. I am your host, Holly Priestley, and this week's guest, Jessie Leonard, has been living out of her van for 2 years with a much bigger dog than I travel with in a much smaller van. And I'm really excited to have her on the show because she's doing it kind of, same, but different, like solo lady in a van traveling with a dog, but we all do it in our own special way. And I love her approach to vanning, to life, to work, and especially her creativity and her creative avenues in life. And so I'm really excited to have her on the show this week. So hello, Jessie.
Hi. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. For those people who don't know you, who aren't following you, who don't know about your journey and your dog and your poetry and all of that, can you share a little bit of your background so that we can catch people up to where we are?
Yeah. So, I moved into my van in August 2019, kind of when things were starting to gain popularity and like the whole hashtag van life thing. Before it was on my radar for years before, but I wanted to travel internationally because I hadn't done that in college. I wanted to do a semester abroad, but never did. So I focused on that for a couple years after college. And then that like sparked my love of travel. And I noticed that my mind would kind of stay more clear. Like I didn't try to clutter it with, what's the word? Like when you like I think a lot of people who like live in vans know that mindset. And even those who are working towards doing it, where you're distracting yourself. Like you're putting all these fillers in front of you so that you're not really seeing what's around you, what's going on in your mind. So I also noticed my creativity was flowing a lot more. I was writing, I've been writing for my blog since 2016 before my first trip to India. And it was my way of documenting just like my reflections, not so much like travel advice, like a lot of those travel blogs do. It was kind of just for myself. I didn't expect anyone to read it. And it's not like blown up by any means. It's definitely still my own personal passion project. But yeah, so after realizing how much international travel and not being in my daily routine, not being stuck in this cycle, I was writing a bit more. So once I got back to the States, I realized that van life was still a thing and people, I think my last trip was actually to Australia, and everyone does that. They drive pretty much across the whole country, which is about as big as the US. So that was kind of the start to it. But since I think we do similar things work-wise, like marketing, like I do mostly social media marketing. So after I think it took 6 months from hitting the road, I thought I was just going to get jobs where I was, and that wasn't really working out, or at least wasn't making me happy because Shasta was a puppy at that point, and having a puppy German Shepherd in a small van, even if I took her to a dog park for 2 hours before work, she would still tear everything up. So it wasn't great for her. Even if I only worked 6 hours and I checked on her like every 2 hours, like by the 4th hour, I'd be like, oh, she chewed on my steering wheel. She chewed on the door, like all these random things. And then the front part of my upholstery was just destroyed. So that made me want to get a remote job. And once I got that, it just opened up my eyes to like, oh yeah, sure, I felt free before, but I was still tied to a location because of my job. But then once I got my remote job, I was like, I can go everywhere. And that was in February of 2020. So I had a month before the pandemic hit, and I had to go back home. So I had a taste of freedom. And then pandemic started, and I was like, oh, great. Looks like I'm going back to my house, see my parents for a couple months. And then I just didn't feel great about traveling super far. So I just stuck around Oregon that summer, in the fall, I think. But yeah, so I've kept that job for a while, and I'm kind of branching out to having other clients. But it has given me a lot of freedom to write like poetry. About, I think, a year into being in my van, I realized that what I was writing from my travels years before, and what I was I'd just like think of something on a drive, or I'd be hiking or walking Shasta, and this thought would come into my head, and I'd write it down in my notes and kind of forget about it. And then I was like reading through them. I was like, this sounds very similar to things I've seen other people call poetry. So then I was like, I guess I'm a poet, I'm a writer. And I started collecting it, and I released my book. It took forever to get it all done because I did the entire thing myself, from designing it and trying to find a proper printer, and self-publishing it was just a whole process that I got to learn about, not in the way that I hoped, but it finished, and I think I released it in March of this year, I think, but I'm just happy it's done.
I love that. Christine Reed was on the show a few months ago, and she also self-published a book last year. And yeah, the whole process is a process. I'm working on mine still. Just, how life goes. You have all the time in the world, and you're like, I'm going to work on my book. And then all the time in the world goes away, and you're like, how am I going to work on my book?
Yeah, I found since I was working a job, I was like, okay, I'm going to have it takes, because my job is part-time. So now it's 25, but at the time it was 20. So I'm like 4 hours a day. I had to like time block myself and say, even if I'm not, because I think when you have this big project, it's really hard to break down everything you need to do. So I'm a to-do list person, and I like broke down everything from like, okay, we need to organize the sections, then send it off to 2 to 3 editors. Then once you get it back, then you can start like designing it, and then do like the first, and then I broke it down, like, let's do the first chapter or whatever I sectioned it off as. And it helped a lot, knowing that, okay, I'm focusing on work, and I'm only thinking about that for the first 4 hours of the day. And then the rest of the day I can do as much or as little I want, but having something to look back at and check things off helped a lot, and made it feel a little bit easier to tackle. But that's what I did when I redid my van build. I had to like break things down, because once everything was out, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how big of a project this is.
Yeah. I was just about to tie it back into that, because that's exactly how a van build is. And I mean, I've been living out of my van for just a smidge longer, and I know that I have some projects I want to do in the van. It's like, it's kind of a, if you give a mouse a cookie kind of situation. Like, if you change this, then you're gonna have to change that, and if you change that, you're gonna have to take this thing out, and if you take this thing out, you're gonna have to redo that, and it just kind of snowballs into this huge project. But I think that, like, the way that you approached publishing your book is very similar to what it sounds like, how it sounds like you approached your life. You're like, this is a thing that I want to do. I'll take it slow. I'll take it, piece by piece if I have to, but like, I'm going to make it happen in chunks. And it sounds like vanning was similar. Like, I'm going to buy the van and get a dog at the same time, which is wild. And then I'm going to get, small jobs wherever I happen to be. And then, okay, that didn't work. Now I'm going to get a remote job. Awesome. And then there's going to be a pandemic. Great. And then, just like piecing it together and making it what you want life to be, and then having that full project. Although, I mean, with a book, sometimes it's kind of easy to be like, well, I published the book in March, now we're done. And with a van, you're never done. You're never done.
Yeah, I was before this, I was looking at, because some of my cabinet doors fell off because I use the old hinges and they just don't work anymore. So I was looking on Home Depot to buy new hinges for my van, even though I like finished it like 3 months ago. So it's never ending. And there's other things, but I'm now that I'm selling it, I'm just getting those little things done that like would potentially impact someone wanting to buy it or not. So just making it look pretty at this point.
Yep. Totally understand that. It sounds like you did a fair amount of travel before you moved into the van. Was your family and your friends, were they supportive of your decision to move into the van? Were they kind of just like, oh, whatever, she like travels internationally, and a van is just, I mean, at least she's in the country, were they supportive, or were they kind of like, girl, you cray?
With my friends, it was like, oh, she does this. This is just Jessie. She's off doing her thing. Like, it's funny. I'm a I don't know if you're like into zodiac things, but I'm a Sagittarius rising. So like the classic like Sagittarius thing is to travel. So that I'm a like Leo sun. And so it's still like, it all kind of is tied together. It makes total sense. But yeah, they were like, oh, that's just, yeah, it makes sense. Like it wasn't really a surprise. They're like, oh, a lot of them seemed kind of jealous, like, oh, I couldn't do that. I'm like, well, why not? You don't have kids, you're not married.
Yeah.
Like, even if you have a partner, that would almost make it easier than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Then my parents, they were also completely on board. I actually asked my dad kind of, cause him and I are really close. So I value his opinion a lot. And he does put a lot of trust in me as I grew up. Like anything I had to drop out of a class when I was a senior in high school that I didn't really need, but it potentially would have maybe helped with college, but it wasn't necessary. And he could see that it was stressing me out. And then he was like, yeah, do it. It's obviously hurting you. So with this, I asked him, I think I sent him a text. I'm like, what would you think if I got a van and lived in it and traveled around the US? And he was like, yeah, that's great. I think it was 25 when I did it, or when I started thinking about it, I was 24. So he was like, you're young, you're in your 20s, you're single, and this is the time to do it. You probably won't have another time again. Kind of jokes on him. I think I can probably do it my entire life if I wanted to. Yeah, he was on board and jealous. A lot of things I've done in my life, he seems to kind of be like, I should have done what you're doing. Like, I don't know why I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But then my mom, she's kind of a free spirit too. So she was like, oh, awesome. She was actually planning on doing a solo bike trip with her dog across Route 66.
Oh,
so I'm a little bit more hardcore than what I'm doing, which I was like nervous. I was telling her, I was like, you're only going to be tent camping and you're going to be biking through these like unknown places. Like I don't feel comfortable with that.
The roles are reversed.
Yeah, exactly. It was really funny, but I think that's still on the horizon for her. She's just taking care of my grandma for now. So it's on pause, but yeah. So it was like not a weird thing really for them, for me to say that. Cause my first solo international trip was India. So they were really nervous about that. But and even still, my dad, they have my location on at all times so they can see where I'm at. And I think that helps a lot. But there's definitely times I think he's told me that it's like hard for him to sleep some nights if he's worried about where I'm at. But they do feel more comfortable if I'm traveling with people, and especially people I've like talked about before. I have a friend that I met like at the very beginning of my van experience, and he taught me a lot. And he's like my big brother. He also has my location on, and he'll like check on me and like, and like all of his friends. He's kind of obsessive like that. He likes to see where everyone is in the country, which is fun. But yeah, so they really like that. When we're together, they feel much better that I'm with him. But yeah, they like it, and they can see how happy it makes me. So.
Yeah. Same. I think my dad is definitely a little bit jealous sometimes. You should do that. You're young, you're independent, blah, blah, blah. And then why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
My parents have definitely like upgraded we've always been like road trippers, campers, travelers. And they've done so much more camping in the last 2 years than in the previous like 5, partially because of the pandemic and partially because I'm out and about all the time, and I hang around like the Four Corners area where ish they live, and we can meet up. And we just spent like a whole week together, and that was awesome. But yeah, they also have my Google location all the time, and I know that makes them feel better. And sometimes it doesn't work because Google is Google is Google. Yeah. And I know when it doesn't work because my mom will text me and be like, where are you?
Yeah, last summer I think I went out, do you know Paulina Lake in Hot Springs near Bend? It's up Newberry National Monument, but there's like no service out there. And I was only gone for maybe 3 hours with the guy I was dating at the time. And I get down the mountain, I have like 3 phone calls and all these text messages. And they're like, we can't see you on your location. Are you okay? And I'm like, I've literally been gone for 4 hours. Like, okay, I'm glad you guys are joking. I think it was like a Saturday, so they didn't have really anything to do. So they're like, let's see where Jessie is. And then there's like nothing. And so I think they got a little worried. And yeah, but now I text them if I know. I usually don't camp out of service alone. Honestly, I haven't really been a lot of places out of service with friends either, because we all kind of work remotely or we like to check things. But I think the last time I was out of service was Descend La Sierra in May. And I didn't even know I wasn't gonna have service. So I kind of felt bad. Like, so I usually try to warn them, hey, I'm not gonna have service this weekend, but they understood because they knew exactly where I was going. I think I sent them the address of that place. And yeah, I actually ended up breaking my finger that weekend. So I had like texted them that, I think it was like Monday evening. I was like, hey, by the way, like fun weekend, but I did hurt myself, but it's okay. I didn't need to go to the hospital.
It's just a small thing. It's fine. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. And they're like, what, how'd you do that? And I was like, it's a little drunk, but yeah.
Normal things.
Yeah. Band gatherings, you never know what's going to happen.
No. And I'm excited for them to start, getting back into the swing of things because
yeah,
we haven't had any for a long time. When you first moved into your van, like before events, before van friends, before knowing all the things you know now, was there a part of you that ever got like scared or concerned? Like, what am I doing? This is a terrible idea. What have I done?
Yeah, I'm trying to, because I think just the first day, like the first day I tried to move into my van broke down 2 hours away from my house. So
no.
I had to get a tow. I was sitting in it. I had AAA, but for some reason they wouldn't take me. I think I was 112 miles away from my hometown. And I was like, I'm so close. I might as well just go there. But they wouldn't tow me there for some reason, even though I think I had the 100-mile limit, but you just pay the extra. So I was fully willing to pay the extra because I was like, I just want to get home. This is my first day and I'm super stressed already. And then this happens. Right. So I ended up having to pay out of pocket. That was like $750. They eventually reimbursed me, which was nice. Took about 3 months. But on top, before that, it was just such a headache. I was sitting in my van for 2 hours. I barely had enough service. I'm calling my stepmom and she's helping me find tow truck companies that I can call. Cause I had phone service that I could call. I just couldn't browse the internet and try to find a tow company that was close by. So someone actually finally picks me up and 2 hours back home. We get there at 10 p.m. and I'm exhausted. And it's a Saturday, I think.
And nothing's open on Sundays.
Yeah. So I just had my van parked in my parents' driveway for 2 days, waiting for my mechanic to open on Monday. And then they had it for 4 days. And that was my first. So I actually was planning on going to Descend on Bend for in the first couple weeks of being in the van. And so I was wanting that adjustment period to be on my own and get used to it.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So I got my van back on Thursday at noon. And that's the day that Descend starts. So I had to drive then 8 hours up to Bend and I made it there a minute before they closed the gates. And they just put me in a spot and they're like, we'll move you tomorrow morning, but you can just park here for the night. I was like, thank you so much. But that ended up being my actual first day because after a week of dealing with so at that moment when I was broken down on the side of the road, first day trying to be in my van, I was like, is this a sign? This is literally, I didn't have any issues before. My van was kind of higher miles. It was 150,000. And it's a 99. So it's older. It's kind of a reasonable thing that something will go wrong after 100,000 miles. So yeah, I just was kind of you know what, at that point, I think I was you don't need to do this forever. If you only do this for 6 months and then you sell it and land someplace again, that's fine. You tried it and it just didn't work. So that was kind of the mindset for the first couple months when I was still adjusting, and I ended up meeting that male friend at Descend who helped me out with everything. And we hung out for the first 3 months of me being in my van. He liked being in Bend too. So he was there while I was there and we camped every night. He taught me how to find good camp spots. And yeah, so that kind of made it all better really quickly. But
finding a mentor in those early days, weeks and months can be really critical. That's not true. The very first thing I did was go to RTR, the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous, which is another massive vehicle dweller meetup in the desert. Mm-hmm. And that's the very first thing I did. I drove 1,500 miles across, three states to get there. And so the first few weeks were figuring it out, but figuring it out surrounded by people who were also figuring it out or already doing it.
How long is Rubber Tramp Rendezvous? 3 weeks?
I think it's officially 2 or 3 weeks. They had a women's only event that year too, beforehand, that I think was a week long. That was
Okay.
really great.
Hmm.
I didn't go last year, but you know, people, there's dirt bags in the desert all the time, especially
Yeah.
in January. It's gonna happen. And then I spent the next few months like figuring it out on my own,
Hmm.
but it was really nice to have like people around at first and like figuring out like, why is my water doing this thing? What is that smell? How do I
Yeah.
make my solar panels work better? Like basic stuff like that, that maybe your stationary, like sticks and bricks friends and family are like, I don't know, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
It sounds hard. You should just move back into an apartment.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad used to say, like, he knows I kind of make things harder on myself than I need to a lot of the time. And this is kind of one of those instances that I've just forced myself into this really difficult lifestyle. Yeah. I realized after like hanging out with him for a few months, and then I went to my parents because it's the holidays. So I stayed from like Thanksgiving to Christmas. And then I went south to uh, Encinitas, and I hadn't stealth camped at that point, so that was really scary.
Yeah,
And luckily, I had some
definitely.
friends who were down there before, and so they gave me a couple spots that they knew like they didn't get issues with. So that helped, having like two spots that I could start out with, and then once I got comfortable with stealth camping, then find my own spots. But after that, I think I was with those friends for 5 or 6 weeks, and that's when then I got my remote job, and I was like, I haven't actually been alone like in my van. Like, it's funny, you think like when you're like, oh, I live alone in my van, I'm not gonna have, it's gonna be hard to make friends, it's gonna be hard to like socialize and hang out, I'm gonna be alone all the time. But at that point I realized I hadn't been alone at all. I would like, yeah, I'd sleep alone, but then I'd go to the beach parking lot and see all my friends, we'd hang out all day, or like three of us would go to a coffee shop and work, then meet up again for dinner and watch the sunset, hang out until the parking lot closed, and then we'd all go our separate ways to sleep, and then do the same thing every single day for weeks. So I went off on my own to Ventura, which then I ended up meeting up with another friend because someone ended up having to, like, someone I met a year before was there, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to see you because I'm not going to see you. Like, who knows when I'll see you next? And that's hard because that's usually the mindset that you're like, I don't know when I'll see you next time, so I want to soak up as much time as I have with you.
That FOMO.
Um, yeah, but then at that point, I did finally go my own way for a couple weeks before the pandemic hit. Yeah, once I was alone, like I think this year is funny because after the pandemic, everyone was so like deprived of friends and human connection, because like you meet someone online, and even if maybe you were in the same area, you're like, oh well, like pandemic, I don't know who you've been seeing, and I'm also trying to keep like lower risk of transmitting it. So like I don't think a lot of people were really meeting up last year. But this year, I was always surrounded by people, and after being alone a lot last year, it was, I had to like say like, oh, like I love you guys, like I hung out with you for 3 days, I need to go camp on my own for a couple days and decompress, and then I'll come back and hang out with you again. 'Cause I was in Bend for most of the summer, and a lot of the same people stay all summer, so I was like, well, like, you're not leaving in a week, or we'll kind of say like, hey, are you going to be around in a couple days or not? So you kind of plan when people are leaving. If someone's going to be around for a while, you're like, oh, I'm going to go on my own for a little bit because I don't need to see you right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've been alone a lot more in the last few months than I had been, in the previous while, and it's kind of weird, but it's also really nice.
I love being alone.
Yeah. But I am looking forward to like the winter migration. I'm going to go down to Arizona, and I know a lot of other vanners go down to Arizona, and so I'm looking forward to seeing everybody
Mhm.
for like a couple of days or a week at a time, and then doing my own thing, and then we
Yeah.
can meet up again, and then I'm doing my own thing. But I
Yeah.
think that yeah, to your point, like socializing in a van and like having that kind of mindset of I don't know when I'm going to see you again, or we like doing the same things, or we need to hang out in the same places. The socializing is just different versus like when you're in a stationary place and you're like, oh, I'm going to see my friends on Friday and Saturday nights. What would you say are some of the biggest like pros and cons or pieces of advice that you would give to someone who wants to van with a dog, or is vanning and wants to get a dog, especially maybe a puppy in a small space? What's that experience, and what kind of advice would you give to somebody?
Yeah. I'd say think about the breed really hard and do a lot of research. When I knew I did a lot of research before looking at German Shepherds, because I wanted something that was sweet, but also would protect me if like push came to shove. And I haven't done any sort of like protection, like training with her. She just kind of picks up if someone's being a little weird and will bark at them. And at night, she just like anything that moves around the van, she's barking. So that's really helpful. But I did when I got her, I thought I'd have the van done when I got her, but of course I was like a month behind. So I was able to crate train her, which was perfect. So in that month, she was sleeping in the crate and she was potty trained really quickly and got her used to small spaces. Like I think having her crate trained before the van, she now sees the van. She's more comfortable in a van than a house sometimes because there's just so even here, like she'll just kind of pace and there's so many places to lie down. And I think she was like a year and a half and I didn't realize she wasn't house trained. Like she like peed right next to me on the carpet when I was in this house with my mom. I was like, oh my God, she's crate trained and van trained, but she's not used to a house. So yeah, so that was a whole nother thing. But I think crate training helps a lot. So either if you can make space for a crate in your van or spend some time, like if you visit your family around the holidays, like crate train them in the house until they're potty trained and let you know when they need to go to the bathroom. Because obviously they like when they're puppies, they need to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So if you can kind of plan your travels where you feel like you can park someplace where you feel safe letting them out in the middle of the night. That was something that I was really worried about. I did this little like mini road trip with her and my van was like half done up to my mom's and it was a 14-hour drive. So we did it overnight, I think actually in Bend. And I paid for a campsite because I was like, I don't know. I wasn't comfortable yet looking for free campsites, but I was also like, I want some place that I feel safe getting out of my van in the middle of the night.
Not stealth camping in the city.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And even, when I was in San Diego, there was one time I think I had to let her out in the middle of the night because she ate something and it was terrifying. I looked outside and it's just, it's not fun. And I never camped in like sketchy areas, but like everything's scary at night in a neighborhood you don't know. But there's definitely certain like commands that I think are really helpful in the van because a lot of dogs just immediately want to jump out the second the door is open. So her and I, she knows that either I go first or I tell her wait and she just kind of stays there. And there's been times I've been like loading things in the van and she knows unless I release her that she can't jump out. So she'll just be sitting. I built a little platform for her in the front seat so she could sit with me while I drive. So she'll just sit up there and kind of watch me. If there's like a dog or something walking by, I have to grab her because she doesn't have the best impulse control right now still. So we're still working on that, but she will chase things if she's given the opportunity. I think like just in general, like just being a good dog owner, I think means that you understand your dog's like triggers potentially and their limitations. And having a German Shepherd, I didn't know I'd really be dealing with a lot of like prejudice kind of like, I can't take her to dog parks anymore because she's not a bad dog at all. She's extremely playful, but she's large. She's 70 pounds. And I think people are just afraid of big dogs, but a lot of people are afraid of German Shepherds in general because of like just bad owners not training them well. Yeah, you're very sweet. But she does boss. Now she started bossing puppies around. If they get close to her ball, she'll tell them to back off, and by telling them she's pinning them and growling a little bit, and it freaks an owner out, which is understandable. But if people don't understand dog behavior and that's like completely normal because dogs can't talk, that's how they communicate, it can lead to her getting kicked by someone when she's not doing anything wrong, which could then lead to like her being fearful of people. So I had to do a lot. Like I ended up doing a lot of research into dog behavior and her breed, and we still have some work to do. Like her recall's not great, so because of that I don't like let her off leash in places where I know she won't come back to me. But it's I think just being a good dog owner means understanding dogs in general and how your dog behaves. They're like predisposed, like behaviors. My mom has a Portuguese water dog, and he's a jumper like crazy. And he's not like the best. He's a very sweet dog. He just doesn't understand down, which is hard when he loves to jump. So like that's like classic for a Portuguese water dog, though. Even like golden retrievers love to jump. So there's like things you have to like figure out with their things. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with that part. I think that knowing your dog and knowing dogs in general, and then also being aware of how other people might perceive your dog, assuming that they don't know anything about dogs, is pretty important. But also, like, if you're going to get, especially if you're going to adopt a dog in a van, like I've had Lisa forever. And so moving into the van with her was like, she was already with me. She was familiar with me. She wasn't familiar with the van, whatever. But if I was moving into a van and I didn't have a dog and I was bringing a dog into the situation, like, you kind of have to be prepared for that to be a full-time job, especially a puppy. But any, like, even adult dogs, like, they're in a new environment. Some dogs don't like cars. Like, it's a very small space. Puppies chew on everything.
Yeah, that was something I had to really get over when she was young, because she chewed. I have a highlight on my Instagram page called Shasta's Victims, because at a certain point I was like, this is comical how many things she's eating. And my friend who checks in my location, he would, like, every single day, he's like, I'm gonna check your stories and see what Shasta's eaten today. And it's you just kind of have to laugh about it, because it's not her fault, it's my fault. I left something out for her to grab. And then I can't even imagine, like, I think it's been like 5 phone cords, and at one point I'd like find a perfect spot on my dash that she couldn't reach, and then she grew longer and was able to reach it, and then she ate it again. So like, it's just like, it's part of it. And but on top of like adopting an older dog, there's all these, like, they can run, like, because they're not used to that situation, and you're putting them in this strange thing that could be really hard for them. Their first instinct is going to be to run away from you. And I've heard of so many people, either in a van or not understand why their dog is running away from them that they just rescued. It's like, well, they're terrified. They're in a new situation. And being in a van just makes it a little harder, because even though, like, you're in this beautiful place, like you can't let your dog off leash for a while. I even know some people who went from a house to a van, and their dogs weren't used to, they were backyard dogs. So they were always enclosed. They didn't know.
Right.
They didn't need
off-leash is like a free place. You don't have to worry about recall if it's in a yard.
Yeah. So they had to keep their dogs on leash for at least a year, until they felt comfortable that their dog would actually come back. But I have a 100-foot lead for Shasta when we're in a park, and since I can't go to dog parks anymore with her, that's like the best way to get her playing fetch in a park. She's on leash, and I have control of her, and I always make sure that, like, I know the limits of how far she can go. So will be like in the middle of a field, where even if she sees a dog that's like 200 feet away, she can't reach it, because we're like far enough away that but it's hard. And like, oh my God, the first year having her as a puppy, like, I didn't even realize that. I just felt so negative, and I was like, why do I just feel down? But I was like, I'm correcting her. I'm yelling at her all the time. I'm trying to like shift her behavior, because she doesn't understand. I'm training her, but I felt so like bad some days, because I was like, I just feel like I've just been yelling all day. I'm not being positive. And some dog, like, I don't really give her negative reinforcement. There's been a couple times that I've had to, like, with really smart dogs, sometimes you have to, like, I've had to pin her down before and say, like, you've messed up, like, and she is like, oh yeah, you're the boss, you're the alpha, I understand that I did something wrong. But usually, like, a lot of, like, more, I don't want to say like less smart dogs, but the ones that just don't have this like hierarchy in their mind, they'll be completely happy with like, oh, I did something good, I get a treat. And they don't even think about like, but what happens if I don't do this? Like, what's going to happen if I don't? Like, that's how she thinks, is like, okay, sure, I know what's good and what my mom wants me to do, but what really is the consequence of me not doing this? Because that other thing looks cool, I think I'm going to do that, because I don't think anything's going to happen if I do that. So there's like this kind of slight like training thing that was just so hard sometimes. It's like, you're testing my authority right now. And it was challenging, but she like follows me, but she's also so friendly. She loves my friends. So yeah, I lucked out with her. A lot of shepherds can be really kind of skittish, but they're one human dog, so it makes sense. Like if they're attached to their human, but she is really social and loves my friends. Like she gets more excited to see them than to see me most days because I'm with her all the time. So
That's how it is with Lisa sometimes. Like when we camp with friends, she's like, she knows whose vehicle is coming up by the engine.
mm-hmm.
You can hear it. Like, oh my God, that's, so and so. I'm so excited to see him. But she's also a very smart dog, and she will also be like, I know what you want, but I don't wanna. I want to do what I want to do. I'm not gonna listen to you. I'm not gonna come back when you call this time. I'm not gonna, and we've been together for much longer, but like she's still a punk.
Yeah. And she's a husky mixed or pure husky or
just brown dog. I don't no idea.
Those are smart dogs. And I mean, once they realize like, oh, like I have another option. I don't have to come to you. Yeah. That's the trouble, because they're like, I'm not going to come this time. Like there's something else that's kind of interesting. And and the trick is to like make yourself more interesting than that, but it's hard. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, you're going to go chase after a chipmunk. I'll find you in a little bit.
Yeah, there's some things you learn to let go. And that's true of like anything van related, but especially van dog related. Like whatever, you'll come back, or after you've had them a few years, you kind of know.
And she's at a campsite with like, if I'm with like other friends, she doesn't want to go very far because she knows that the fun is there and like all of her favorite people are there. So she just doesn't wander too much, but we usually can't far enough away. She will go say hi to neighbors, and that's the problem. I'm like, you're a German Shepherd. You can't just go say hi to people because they're afraid of you. But I noticed in the Pacific Northwest, I was actually just talking to my brother about this, people are a lot more friendly to German Shepherds and like bigger breeds and huskies and pit bulls, which is really nice. But when I'm here in California, I think Northern California is a little different, but people understand that like they're working dogs, they're really smart, and they are actually really friendly if they're raised right. Usually if like you're out at a brewery, it's probably a friendly dog. But I was just at this brewery with my brother a couple nights ago, and I was telling him, I'm like, we wouldn't be left alone if I was in a brewery in Oregon. Like people would be coming over to try to pet her all like the whole time. Oh, there she goes, Shasta. That's what she does when we're in the van at night. It's like a really deep bark, which is nice. But thank you, Shasta. Come here. But like here, people are afraid. I've had people cross the street when we're walking, and she's not doing anything like mean. Here, ears will be down. She's happy we're walking. Her tail's wagging, like big smile on her face. But people just don't understand. They're used to like it's California, so it's more like labs, golden retrievers, so like purse dogs as they're called. But so it's nice being up there because I know people like understand, and I don't really have to worry about her so much up there, like potentially someone hurting her. But she's big.
Totally.
I think dogs and vans, like they're the happiest. Like I'm with my friends and they have dogs. Like they're all just off leash, running around in circles, playing with each other, and you just see how like happy they are. And another, I think a good thing too, when you do get a puppy or even just a dog, if you're rescuing, is having the flexibility in your work schedule that you can change things in like your van life or their life, and spending the time that they need. Like when I was working that job in Bend in a location, that was really hard because I couldn't leave. I couldn't watch her when she was having because there's definitely certain days I noticed that her energy is higher, some days when they're lower. So, but even now with the heat, as the summers are getting hotter, being able to leave one town and go to another that's cooler, but still have a job is really awesome. I don't think I could at the time. I think when I had that location dependent job, it was fall, so I didn't have to worry about the weather. But I always I'm a part of a couple like groups on Facebook, and every time I see something pop up about someone wanting a dog, I'm like, do you have a remote job? What season of the job do you have? Like if it's fall, maybe, but if you're in any place that's too hot, like it's just not, that can't work.
Yeah. The first summer I was in the van, I've worked remotely for a long time, but I didn't have like a really good system to be able to work from the van all the time. I needed a lot more data than my phone plan had. So I was tied to towns a lot to go to coffee shops and breweries, libraries, etc. pre-pandemic, obviously.
Yeah.
But even during the summer, it was like, I have to show up at the coffee shop the second they open. And then by like 10 a.m., I have to be done working because I have to go sit in the park with my dog because
Yeah.
I can't leave her in the van. I can't bring her inside.
Yeah.
Or like every town I went in, I would immediately figure out like what patios were dog friendly, what like
That's always
breweries
what the
had
first
air
thing I search in
conditioning.
a town.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be really limiting, to your point, like summertime with a dog in a van is a
Yeah.
hassle and a half. So if you can move, that's even better. So these days I have a lot more, my Wii Boost and everything else.
Yeah, my
That
next week I'm
helps.
definitely wanting a Wii Boost and a different, like, I just realized how much I do actually like working in my vehicle and not having to be like spend like $100 a month just to go to a coffee shop. Which I do like coffee shop culture, but it adds up.
Yeah.
Especially if they have delicious pastries. You're not just buying a coffee. It ends up being a $10 a day thing.
Yeah. Well, if I'm working, I kind of have to eat a little bit and I might as well treat myself.
It's it's a Monday. I'm gonna treat myself, and then it's like Friday. And I'm like, oh, it's a Friday. I'm gonna get a like, or I'm like, I'm leaving next week. I want to like soak up all this good food. That's me and Ben every time. Like the week before I leave, I'm like, oh, I have to hit all these favorite places and eat this exact pastry, and like, yeah, it's so. Oh my god, it adds up.
Do you have an idea of what your monthly costs are in the van?
Um, I move pretty slow, so I'd say my monthly costs are like under $1,000.
Mhm.
Especially being outside of California, like your gas is.
Yeah.
I mean, the tank in this van is 36 gallons, so when I fill up, it's pretty much $100 every time. But some like when I'm here, $100 is like 3/4 of the tank. So
Yep.
being up in Oregon, yeah, a tank of gas goes a lot further, especially when I'm in one town for a month. But yeah, I'd say that. And I drink tea or black coffee. I don't really like lattes and things. So it's usually the cheapest drink at a coffee shop, which helps. Then we go to parks a lot, do free things, free hikes. And yeah, we keep it pretty low cost, which is nice. Yeah, I haven't done like really long travel days, like where I'm filling up like 3 or 4 times in a day.
Yeah. Oh my
I don't want to miss
word.
out on things
36
along the way.
gallon tank, that would be a lot of driving.
Yeah, I think because I was in Arizona when everything started shutting down last year, or yeah, last year. Seems like it was like 2 years ago. So
It
much happened.
almost was.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, true. We're almost at the end of 2021, which is weird. But yeah, I think I drove 14 hours from Arizona to Northern California because
Oh,
I was like, I just need to get out of here because I couldn't do any work. All the showers had shut down. All my go-to coffee shops, the library was shut down. And where I think I was in Prescott, and there was no service anywhere. Like I couldn't just sit in a parking lot and do my work because every place was like 2 hours. So yeah, I was like, looks like I'm driving all day.
yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
like you're just trying to get to point A to point B for like a very specific purpose. And yeah, I like seeing things along the way. Like when I was there, I was planning on going because I was making my way to Sedona. So I was going to go to, I think it's like Jerome, and is it Cottonwood? I think is near there. So I was like trying to hit those small towns on the way and just didn't make it.
Spent a lot
It
of
was like
time.
an hour away from Sedona and I just couldn't, yeah, didn't make it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if everything's shut down anyway, you didn't miss anything. You'll
Yeah.
get it on the next go round.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping to be down there this after. I'm kind of thinking. I keep trying to go to Baja, but it just depends with work. Like I have to be pretty tied to internet almost daily. So I'm trying to shift my job where instead of working with like a firm, I'm trying to get personal clients because my process is different. Where I like do it monthly instead of weekly. So doing it weekly, I have to be online every single day. It's kind of annoying.
Nope, I totally feel you. I would really like to go to Baja, but I want to make sure that when I do, I'm essentially taking like 3 or 4 weeks off just to go because I don't think service is going to be good. And I would rather service be like a bonus than
Yeah.
a requirement that I'm stressed about the whole time.
Yeah, if I could check in like once a week, which I think is pretty reasonable, like go to a coffee shop once a week and even a bar or something, just check my emails and yeah, do some like little things. But yeah, I agree. I don't want to be stressing about it and like chasing internet and then you are kind of tied to towns. There's so many really cool beaches is it the Sea of Cortez that's on the inside of the peninsula?
Yeah.
Like that's all remote. Like you don't really have service out there. So getting to those really remote beaches is part of it. But if you can't because you have work, then you're only spending like the weekend, which better than nothing, but there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, like if you travel a little bit slower, you can save a little bit more money, which is always really nice. I tell people that vanning can be as expensive or as inexpensive as you want within reason.
Yeah.
And I feel like most of the people that I know that like live very similarly to me do make it work for less than $1,000 a month, which opens up a lot of possibilities for remote jobs, for freelance, for contract, for, you know, trying to start your own shebang and all of that. And I think that that is one of the many forms of freedom you can get from it.
Yeah, it's been really nice having only, because that when I got this job, I was like, I can't work more than 25 hours a week with just like my happiness, but also spending time with the dog, making sure she's exercised and having that flex, because I don't have to work 5 days. I can like bunch of, like even last week, I think I worked like 3 days. I just worked like 8 to 10 hour days, and then I had 4 days off, and there's a couple things I have to do daily, but that like takes 10 minutes. So being able to also with the heat wave that went through Central Oregon, it was in like July, that was kind of out of the blue. I was like, I gotta go now. I can't leave tomorrow because I don't want my van to overheat on the drive to the coast. Like, so having flexibility, I can text my job and say, hey, I'm not working today, and I'm gonna be working over the weekends, just so you guys know. And they're like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. So, but I've been with them for almost 2 years, so they're kind of like, she gets her work done by Sunday. We're not worried.
Yeah. And so you've mentioned once or twice on the show, and I know that you are working on selling your van. What are your future plans? Do you have an ideal rig in mind that you want to upgrade to, or what's going on there?
Yeah. Well, so of course I think a lot of people have like multiple things that they could see down. Like I love school buses, like short buses, but I just had to I had the whole front suspension done on my van because I off-road with it and it's not made for that. Yeah. So the next thing I'm wanting is a truck and a slide-in like over cab
cool.
camper. So yeah, I'm looking for a 4x4 truck, and that I'm kind of, with the engine issues I've had with my van, I'm really leaning towards like spending more money on the truck. And then, because I do have the like kind of the skills to fix things that need to get fixed on the camper. I've dealt with that plenty. So I'm okay with getting like a 10, 20-year-old camper and making it nicer, but I can't deal with another, because if your house doesn't move, then it's just a house. It's not a tiny house on wheels or whatever you want to call it. But,
and if it has to go to the mechanic, you're out more than a car.
Yeah, exactly.
A home as well, and an office, and a dog crate, and like literally everything.
Yeah, all of your belongings are stuck in one place, and it's just breakdowns aren't fun. I've had so many. I think I've had like 4 like kind of major ones where I was like without my van I usually try to not plan, but I make it very clear to the mechanics that like this needs to be done in a day, or a day and like and a half, where I only need to spend one night in a hotel. But,
yeah.
So I think I need to grab Shasta's toy again. She got it under the couch. Little brat tonight. Yeah. Are you being a brat today? I'll have to get it over there. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is very real about what it's like having a German Shepherd in a van. It's not easy. It's not even easy in a house.
No.
Yeah. That's the next plan. I'm really excited. I'm hoping I sell my van in the next couple weeks. But yeah, I'm just excited to have a reliable, because of the breakdowns, even though at this point, pretty much everything that could have gone wrong in my van is fixed. So it's probably better set now than it was when I first moved into it. okay, you need to go lie down. But I just wouldn't take it like I didn't feel comfortable. I really want to go to Montana, and I'd love to experience New England in the fall, but I just can't do that with my van. So having that, I'm really excited to have that truck where I just feel more comfortable. And I'm looking at getting a Ford. I have a Dodge now, but I think it was one of the last like consistent, like reliable Dodge engines, but it's just old. So
yeah.
Fixes made sense, and especially the suspension work. That was completely on me. Holes too fast in the forest. I didn't see it, or once I got my all-terrain tires, I think I was pushing it a little harder too, because I was like, I got the tires, I'm good.
I can do whatever I want now. I got new shoes.
It was honestly pretty surprising. Like there's one hill I remember going up in Hood River that I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't have those tires. But there's like, definitely if you hit a pothole too fast, it's like shaking and like moving your whole, like all the axles and stuff down there. I know everything about how those things work, but it's funny when I get something fixed and I tell my dad, he's like, I didn't know that was a thing. I was like, I didn't know either. Now I know what it's called and kind of know what it does, but I don't know what it's connected to or all that. But
every time something goes wrong, you get to learn a little bit more about how cars work that you didn't know before.
Yeah, I do appreciate all the mechanics I've gone to. They explain. I think I show up with, I've had so many issues in the past with mechanics just being awful to me.
Yeah.
And so I kind of go in with like a no bullshit face. Like, you're not going to screw me over. This is what's already been fixed. This is what it sounds like. I've already Googled things, especially now being on the road. I know some people who live in vans that used to be mechanics. So if something's happening, like a weird sound, I'll ask them like, hey, what does this kind of sound like? And they help me out so I can kind of go to the mechanic with sort of an idea. And once they fix it, almost every single time lately, they've showed me what is leaking or why it needs to be replaced. Like when I had my suspension work done, the guys at Les Schwab brought me to the garage, and they were like pushing the tire side to side and then like hitting it, and they're like, this shouldn't happen. I was like, yeah, that doesn't look like that should happen because you're not turning the wheel, like it's not like stuck. Yeah, it was. So I was like, thank you for showing me, like helping me realize. And I had some shakiness happening, so I was like, that makes sense now that while I'm like braking, there's all this shaking.
Jessie, where can people find you online if they want to follow your journey and see what kind of 4x4 truck you get next and see more pictures of Shasta?
So my Instagram is straywith.me, period me. And then Shasta actually has her own Instagram, Shasta the Adventure Dog, because I just don't want to spam people on my own Instagram, because that's more for like kind of my travels, and I post my poetry on there too. Then all my links are on my Instagram, so it's been a good central place. My website is straywithme.co, and that has my blog posts and where you can buy my book. I still have a few copies available on there, and that's obviously where like the next books will also be listed. And I do have a YouTube channel. I don't post as consistently as I'd like to, but that is, I think, just Stray With Me. Yeah.
All right, awesome. And I will link to all those in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for being here and being a part of this. And I can't wait to meet up with you guys on the road somewhere and have our dogs probably yell at each other.
Yeah, all the dogs don't really like Shasta. She's a lot. She's a bit much.
Yeah, Lisa's old. So
yeah.
You know, she likes to put puppies in their place and likes to have them leave her alone. But dogs that are substantially bigger than her, she kind of leaves alone.
Yeah.
But as always, thank you to everyone who is listening, watching, reading, being a part of the show. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead, subscribe, hit the notification button or bell, depending on which platform you're on, so you can be notified of every weekly episode. And give it a thumbs up, 5 stars, reviews, comments, all the things. That helps the algorithms know that we exist and get us out in front of people who need these stories. Maybe you know a young woman who wants to move into a van, maybe with a dog, maybe without a dog. Send her this episode so that she can find new ways to pursue the life that she is interested in. And if you want to help offset some of the costs that go into producing the show, I have a Venmo, a PayPal, and a Patreon where you can get behind the scenes access and maybe even a little snail mail from me to you. And as always, again, thank you for being here, and tune in next week for another excellent episode. Bye!
We've reached the end of this
episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything I referenced over on my website, hollycpriestley.com, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, on YouTube if you watch the video version, or find the written version on my website. Come follow our journey on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and our website. I like to share updates and behind the scenes on the road. If you want to help offset some of the costs that go into producing the show, I also have a Venmo and a PayPal set up. And if you want some behind the scenes activities and maybe even some snail mail in your mailbox, come join us over on Patreon. Thanks for tuning in this week. Tune in next week. And until then, keep your life on the DL too.